I only let Swedish girls bounce on it.
Yeah, that's not even the craziest thing you will hear today. I promise. Because in their prime, a lot of these NBA legends treated the entire planet like their personal VIP lounge. And they had women in abundance. And today, I'm going to expose what really went down from Wilt Chamberlain's $1 million bare bachelor pad to Magic Johnson, who slept with over 60 women per week. And if you think that's crazy, you haven't heard the half of it. Because if you really want to know how much of a playground the league was for these guys, you have to look at what went down during the 2000 Sydney Olympics. KG went on the All the Smoke podcast and didn't even try to sugarcoat it. He called the 2000 Sydney Olympic Village a gangbanger environment.
Olympics is all gangbanger.
And he's not talking gangs or violence and all of that. He was talking about how much dirty business went down in the village. Imagine the village like a massive 10,000,000 feet market where everyone is attend and actively looking to get some action. But the absolute peak of this madness was the 30-second condom raid. KG tells the story about a game room in the village where a staffer walked in with a trash can and dumped about 10,000 condoms into a massive bowl on a table. He said before the guy could even turn his back, literally in 30 seconds, every single one was snatched up.
He walking. Finally, he get to this big old bowl on the table. You don't even know this is a bowl. The man dumps about 10,000 condoms in the middle of the thing.
It was like a Black Friday sale, but for people who wanted to smash. In fact, it got so wild that NBA security, led by this guy named Horace, actually pulled the team out of the village. They realized having the NBA guys around was too influential, which is just security code for saying they were causing a sexual riot. And so they moved the squad to a locked-down hotel 90 minutes away.
It's not a condom in the Security got us out of there. It's like, no, you got to get y'all out of here. They don't let NBA players in the village because it's so influential.
Somebody getting tonight.
They basically had to put the dream team in a timeout to keep them from spending the whole Olympics in the village game room. But here's where it gets really petty. KG didn't just live the life. He used it to destroy people's heads. Fast forward to January 7th, 2013 at Madison Square Garden. The Celtics were playing the Knicks and KG decided to drop a nuclear bomb on Carmelo Anthony. Right in the middle of the game, KG leans in and allegedly tells Melo his wife, Lala Anthony, tastes like Honey Nut Cheerios. Now, Melo didn't just get mad, he completely spiraled. He shot a pathetic 6 of 26 because his brain was literally melting on the court. The best part is that Melo didn't even wait for the locker room. He went looking for KG, like he was back on a street corner in Baltimore. He tried to storm the Celtics tunnel and eventually waited by their team bus. It took 5 NYPD officers, MSG security, and coach Mike Woodson just to keep Melo from catching a case that night. And the rumor is that KG didn't just pull that line out of thin air. Word on the street is that a high-level New York club promoter fed Kevin some intel about Melo's marriage being on the rocks and specific details about LA's relationship with other NBA players. When he was reportedly asked to respond to the situation, Kevin said, "Melo was playing for a ring, but I was playing for his sanity. If I know what your wife tastes like, I've already won." KG was playing psychological games, but some guys in this league were running full-scale logistics operations just to keep their rotations in check. That brings us to the man who literally kept a scouting report on every girl in the NBA circle. It's one thing to go wild at an Olympic village where thousands of people know what they came to do. But if you want to talk about the real madness in the NBA, it's the shared dating pool. Gilbert Arenas, who's the unofficial CEO of NBA Snitching, hopped on his podcast and dropped a bomb that should be the first slide in every rookie's orientation. He claimed that a staggering 70% of NBA girlfriends have already been cycled through the league.
70% of y'all girlfriends gonna sleep with another NBA player.
Yep.
Why y'all dating them? So get that over here.
Think about that. In a room of 10 players, 7 of them are dating someone who's already been in another locker room. According to Gil, in this league, you don't find a girl. You just take your turn. And to understand how huge this is, you have to look at the all-star roster of women who move through these circles like they're being traded for future first-round picks. First, we have Brittany Renner, the undisputed scouting director of the industry. Remember her drama with PJ Washington? She has also been linked to James Harden, Ben Simmons, Colin Kaepernick, and reportedly Jamal Murray. But it's not even just her. What about Dream McEwell, a legend in the rotation? She's been in the mix since the mid-2000s, linked to Gilbert himself, Deshaun Stevenson, and more recently Jalen Green, who is literally young enough to be her child. Then we have Larsa Pippen. This one is just disrespectful. She went from Scottie Pippen to Tristan Thompson, then Malik Beasley, which was a mess because Beasley was still married, and then she moved on to Marcus Jordan. Yeah, Michael Jordan's son. Imagine the vibe at Thanksgiving when your ex-husband's teammate is technically your new dad. But even that wasn't enough drama for Larsa. By mid-2024, she dumped Marcus, calling the relationship embarrassing and toxic, even claiming he was sending her threatening messages after she cut him off. Now, she's already moved on to the next one. Jeff Kobe, a former pro baller who's 19 years her junior. At this point, Larsa isn't just in the rotation. She's basically running her own scouting company. And don't get me started on Kendall Jenner. She literally has a starting five that could legitimately win the Western Conference Finals. I'm talking Devin Booker, Ben Simmons, Blake Griffin, Kyle Kuzma, and Jordan Clarkson. But here's the part that actually freaks me out. The photo check ritual. Gil revealed that when a rookie walks into the locker room smiling because he's got a new girl, the veterans will immediately shut it down. They make him pull up her Instagram, and if that girl has been around, the vets flag her as locker room poison. It's a mandatory vetting process to make sure a 19-year-old isn't catching feelings for a woman who has already been through half the roster. Oh, it gets weirder. Arenas talked about special work, which is the player's code for negotiating who gets which girl after a game. It's like a post-game draft. The stars and the high earners get the first pick of the talent waiting in the VIP sections, and the bench players get the leftovers. But as fun as all of this sounds, it's also a dangerous game because he also mentions stories of women who wait for players to fall asleep just to take photos or videos of them for extortion. We're talking about pay me, or this goes on Shade Room energy. To fight back, the players allegedly run a master blacklist group chat. If a girl tries to pull a move on a player in Miami, her face and her stats are blasted to the guys in LA and NYC before her flight even lands. As Arenas famously put it, in this league, you don't find a girl, you just take your turn. It's a high-stakes, high-volume lifestyle where the players are treating their dating lives like a corporate merger. But while Gil and the other guys were out here using spreadsheets and group chats to keep track of their rotations, they're still playing for second place. Because if you think a 70% cycle rate is crazy, you aren't ready for the man who treated womanizing like a full-scale job. No jokes. That leads us to the man, the myth, and the literal machine, Wilt Chamberlain. You know, it's very easy to think the modern guys are moving fast with their little rosters until you hear about this dude. Wilt Chamberlain wasn't just playing the game. He was basically the CEO of an industrial-scale womanizing operation. You know how players who wanted to get into it with the women either did it at hotels or private rooms? Well, this man built a $1 million lair in Bear called Ursa Major. Image. This place was a straight-up headquarters for, he had this legendary transition room, which was basically like an airport security line, but for women. Before a girl could even get near him, she had to spend time in this room getting vetted with expensive drinks and curated music. It was a literal intake process to make sure the energy was right before she moved to the inner sanctum. And that inner sanctum, well, let's just say it was a scene straight out of an X-rated sci-fi movie. Life magazine went in there in '72 and found a room covered in floor-to-ceiling mirrors because obviously Wilt wanted to watch himself dominate from every possible angle. The centerpiece was a massive purple velvet-lined waterbed covered in real fur. It looked less like a bedroom and more like a sex dungeon. And for a man who claimed he slept with over 20,000 women, that's totally believable. And speaking of the numbers, let's actually look at the math because it's sickening. To hit 20,000 between the ages of 15 and 55, Wilt had to be moving at a rate of 2.3 women per day for 40 years straight. No offs and no flu games, just pure unadulterated smashing. But the funniest part to me is that the man had a code. He claimed he never messed with married women. Not because he was a saint, but because he didn't want the paperwork or the drama. He wanted the efficiency of a factory, not a soap opera. And if you want to know how global this operation was, just look at what he did in 1972. After being bored with American women, Wilt allegedly decided he was going to strictly go after the Swedish Olympic high jumpers. Because if you're Wilt, why not? There's more. There's a legendary story of a 10-day bender he went on in Hawaii where he reportedly knocked out 23 different women in 10 days. And that brings us to the question, where are the kids? I mean, if you've got 20,000 entries on your stat sheet, you should have enough 7-foot kids to fill out an entire G League division. But there's nothing. The street intel from the 70s says Wilt had a massive hush money fund and a team of professional fixers who handled any accidents before they ever hit the news. He was basically running a ghost operation. High output, zero paper trail, and zero child support. Got to give it to the guy. He ran a smooth operation. Wilt was the machine that built the blueprint. But while he was out here focused on the raw numbers, let's talk about the man who took the Showtime lifestyle and turned it into a high-stakes, high-risk lifestyle that didn't pan out all too well. If Wilt had an industrial operation of women going on, Magic Johnson was the global franchise. While Wilt was hiding out in his mountain lair like some Bond villain, Magic was outside in the LA streets treating the entire city like his personal VIP section. I know it sounds like I'm exaggerating this, but the pace this man kept was actually psychotic. In his own autobiography, Magic didn't even try to play humble. He straight up said he was accommodating as many women as possible. We're talking about a guy who reportedly maintained 60 women a week.
Think about that.
That's not a social life. That's an 18-hour workday with no lunch break. He even admitted in an interview that he once had 6 women in the room at the same time. Not in the house, not down the hall, in the actual room.
But, I lived a bachelor's life, a Hollywood life, where a lot of women came my way.
That's an understatement. In his new book, My Life, Johnson talks about his life on the road before he got married. 40 to 50 women in the hotel after every game looking for players. Most dudes today can't even get a text back. And Magic was out here running a full-blown convention in his master bedroom. But can we really blame him, though? I mean, Magic wasn't just some athlete at a club. He was the undisputed king of Los Angeles. So, he'd throw these invite-only bashes at his mansion where you'd have A-list actors, elite athletes, and the baddest women on the planet all packed into one space. And at the center of it all was Magic. With that billion-dollar smile, he made every other man in the room feel like they were playing for the JV squad. In fact, the parties got so wild that at a certain point in the night, if you didn't have a woman in any room, you'd be sent out of the party. See, Magic lived up to his name, though, and through the man's balls were made of vibranium. He once admitted to hooking up with a random woman in an office while a high-level corporate meeting was happening literally on the other side of the wall. He said he was sweating the whole time, not because of the cardio, but because he was staring at the door waiting for some CEO to walk in and catch him in 4K. That's the kind of I do what I want energy that defined his entire era. Magic knew that being the face of LA meant he owned the super groupies of the 80s. These women would prioritize Magic over literally anyone else in the league. If you were a rival player coming into LA for a game, you'd already lost before the tip-off because you weren't just competing with him on the court. You were competing with a guy who had already won the city, the clubs, and the girls before your team bus even left the airport. But of course, that high-speed lifestyle eventually hit a wall made of pure reinforced concrete. On November 7th, 1991, the world basically stopped spinning when Magic announced he was HIV positive. It was the moon landing moment for the NBA, and it nuked the Showtime fantasy in 5 minutes. It forced everyone to realize that the 60-a-week pace comes with a price tag that even a max contract can't cover. And while we were talking about Lakers legends, we got to talk about the big Aristotle man. See, while Shaq was out here being everyone's favorite giant, he was low-key running a black ops mission to keep his sexual activities under wraps. This wasn't some guy sliding into DMs. Shaq was moving like a cartel boss with a $400 million budget and a Secret Service-level cleanup crew. Shaq eventually owned it, and in his words, I wasn't protecting my vase. So I'm not going to say it was her. It was all me. But man, is an understatement. Imagine being Shawnee, his wife, walking into your own crib in Cleveland, and the housekeeper looks you dead in the eye and asks if you're the new nanny. Why? Because Shaq supposedly had another girl living in the house so comfortably that the staff just assumed she was part of the payroll. That is a generational level of disrespect. You're the wife, and you're being treated like a job applicant in your own living room while the side piece is probably upstairs using your favorite towel. But that's not even the craziest part in all of this. Apparently Shaq had women everywhere. In fact, in Miami, the streets were whispering about a secret South Beach condo he kept specifically for his women. It was basically a satellite office for sex. Shawnee only found out because of an overzealous hotel clerk. It was the funniest thing. Shawnee walked into a high-end hotel, and this clerk, bless his heart, is like, "Oh, Mrs. O'Neal, you forgot your scarf and gloves last time you were here," and then proceeds to hand her a bag of clothes that don't belong to her. Imagine the look on his face when she held that scarf up. Game over, man. And to keep the circus on the tracks for as long as he did, he had a straight-up fixer network. We're talking military security teams whose entire job was basically controlling his side pieces. These guys would clear entire hotel floors and manage the flow of girls like they were protecting a president. They were basically the Secret Service for his visitors, making sure no two girls ever bumped into each other at the elevator or the lobby. It was a 24/7 operation just to protect Shaq's brand from his own appetite. Shaq thought he could muscle his way through the mess. But while he was busy dodging dry cleaning receipts, this next guy was doing the exact opposite. Man, Rodman was a straight-up glitch in the system. While everyone else was worried about their stats, Dennis was out here playing GTA in real life. You heard about that Madonna contract, right? Yeah, that was peak madness. Rodman said she literally offered him $20 million to get her pregnant. And she wasn't playing around. It was a straight-up no protection deal. In fact, there's this story that lives rent-free in my head. So Rodman was at a craps table in Vegas down 20 racks, and the phone rang. It was Madonna. And the next thing she tells him is she's ready right now. Guess what? Dennis literally leaves his chips on the table, hops on a G5 airplane, flies across the country to NYC, handles business for a few hours, and then flies straight back to the same seat at the table in Vegas. Now, if that isn't a flex, I don't know what is. And don't even get me started on the live mic situation. He once accidentally broadcast a whole session with 6 girls to an entire club in the Hamptons because his mic was still on. Bro had the whole party listening to his highlights in the bedroom. He even went to North Korea, and rumors say Kim Jong-un hooked him up with a pleasure squad full of women who were there for the taking. Rodman basically wrote the manual for this image in his book Bad as I Want to Be. He straight up said, NBA life is 50% sex, 50% money. No lies detected. While most of these dudes were out here lying to their girls and hiding in phantom condos, Lou was already living in 326. This man didn't have a rotation. He had a thirple. He was dating Ashley and Reese at the same time, and they all just hung out.
Probably the 2 girlfriends thing.
Okay, what annoys you about it? About being
Just people asking me about what I'm doing.
Yeah.
That's
well,
it.
I mean,
like
technically.
Drake literally immortalized this man with that line. 6 men like Lou will, 2 girls, and they get along. It was the ultimate I'm the man badge. And the weird part is that these 2 women have never had an issue. At least none that the public has heard about. But I guess if all you have to do to live such a luxurious life is to share your man with another woman, that's probably a pretty good deal. In fact, these women have been spotted numerous times at games having fun and holding hands. Image. The rest of the league was shook because Lou pulled off the one thing they couldn't. Total honesty. And speaking of honesty, Steven Jackson is that one uncle in the family who tells you the exact stuff you don't want to hear. He's the one who admitted to blowing $33,000 out of a $35,000 check on women in one weekend in Venezuela.
Next year, where you at? Venezuela?
Venezuela, one of the best, some of the most beautiful women I've ever seen in my life. Marinos de Oriente, yeah, Venezuela.
Had a good time out there.
When I made $35,000, I came home with $2,000.
He's also been warning his son and other young players that there's no moral code out here. He told him straight up that women treat the league like a career ladder, and they aren't looking for love. They're looking for promotion. Because he was so tapped into the streets, he was basically the fixer for the team. If a young rookie got caught in some extortion trap at a club, Stax was the one using his connections to make the problem go away. He saw way too many guys hit that baby mama financial ruin, getting wiped out by 5 different women, and he's been on a mission to tell everyone that the lavish life is a total trap. And that brings us to the last man standing, Lamar Odom. This is where the party gets real quiet because for him, it wasn't even a game anymore. It was a sickness. Basically, he has been dealing with a lot of addiction issues, and sex addiction was basically his gateway drug. He admitted to sleeping with over 2,000 women, and it wasn't even dating. He was just always hiring professional escorts as a coping mechanism.
The one thing that kind of stuck out in that book was that you claimed that you slept with over 2,000 women.
That was, I never really counted, but probably had to be some up there. Like,
the saddest part of this whole thing is the Love Ranch story in Nevada. We're talking about a 3-day bender at a brothel where Lamar spent $1,750 to have the run of the place. He was doubling up on the high using a cocktail of herbal sexual enhancement pills and heavy substances just to stay in the game. It was a professional setup where he had 2 escorts, Ryder Cherry and Monica Monroe, basically on a 24-hour shift just to keep him entertained. By the time they found him, he was face down and unconscious with mucus coming out of his nose and mouth. He had suffered 12 strokes and 2 heart attacks. He was literally decomposing while alive because his body couldn't handle all the substances. While the world was obsessed with the Kardashian shadow and the public marriage, it was all a cover for total darkness. He'd be in a 5-star hotel with Chloe one night, and the next morning he'd be in a sketchy motel with 3 random women he met on the street. It was a double life that didn't just break his marriage, it put him in a 4-day coma and almost in a casket. Man, it's actually crazy when you think of how these legends were moving. From Wilt running a literal industrial scale, smashing factory, to Magic keeping a 60-a-week pace, like it was a 9 to 5. These dudes were on a roll. Today's rookies are out here stressed about one accidental DM or getting caught on a Ring camera. But the OGs were moving like they had diplomatic immunity. They turned the entire league into a 247th VIP lounge. And honestly, fair play to them.